when they work with them, that is the gap. Hey, Gen Z, this generation, they are really vocal. But for this generation, I think the way that they think is really different.
Welcome to Where Are My Customers? Brought to you by AeroChat and produced by Stridex. Hey, hello, Ting. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Hey, so I think first thing first, I'm a bit embarrassed to say that I was actually doing my usual host duties and trying to do some research on you. And I realized that, I didn't quite get much information besides some publicity about your published book, right? Regarding Gen Z.
Yeah.
So I think for those of us who are not familiar with you, can you give us a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and what you're up to these days?
Okay. So I don't blame you for that because we are actually going through, and that is the reason why we're actually going through a renaming, rebranding process. But just to take you back a little to how it all began, my entrepreneurship journey.
Yes.
I actually started my entrepreneurship journey in an entrepreneurial education startup space. So when I started this, my whole mission was really to enable the next generation. And I don't know if I share this story, where we met in person before, but it all started from my personal journey. So it was really my personal story that gave me that push to hey, this is really what I want to do for the next generation. So when I started that, it was to equip the next generation with this entrepreneurial mindset and skill sets. So fast forward to today, what we are doing is that we are actually encompass the whole program and mentorship for the next generation to help them to basically transition into the future of work. So our target audience are actually from 16 years old and onwards.
Is that still considered Gen Z? I'm actually very lost in terms of the who is supposed to be in Gen Z and then the Alpha and Millennial. I'm totally lost. Could you care to just explain to us what's that time range we're looking at? Yeah.
So I would say this because this is on paper theoretically it's 1997 onwards. But again, we do see a lot of tail end characteristics. So I'm not saying that Gen Z has to be between 13 all the way to 28. There's a hard stop. We do see some of the tail end, but it's in general there's the characteristics that they have. So it's funny that you asked this question because it's a great question. So when I first started, it's actually where Gen Z they were just born. That's why my target audience was actually 10 to 15. So over the years, they have evolved. I mean, they all grew up as well. So, and that is why the programs that we are designing, the mentorship program that we're running, it's also for a slightly older age group.
No, the reason I ask is because I always confuse myself whether I'm, Gen X. No, I'm obviously not Gen Z, but Gen X. And you're like, oh no, Gen X is 1880 or 80. So there's always a break, either you're 80. Some people say it's 81, some people it's 80. Then I'm always stuck. So that got me really confused. Yeah. Plus now you have what? I don't know.
Gen Alpha.
What? Yes, I'm totally lost. I only know that I'm the old generation. That's an easier way. That's probably an easier way to mark it. I'm the older generation. You guys are the younger ones.
No, but I think the thing is, a lot of times we kind of categorize ourselves into a certain generation, but I think sometimes we don't think like that generation. We just didn't realize it.
No, I don't think we do, but I think again, that's also the interesting part, right? If you're talking about Von Wen, and that's chronological, but the mentality, the mindset, you can shift. And there are always people who are much younger, but they are more conservative, or they are more quote unquote old-fashioned in their thinking, whereas you have people who are more elderly, but they're full of zest and they behave like Gen Z or millennial. So I think that's where the challenge is, right?
Yes.
But how do you navigate that? Because you said something about that this is where the spectrum is, but the way you're or the audience that you're catering to are marked within that chronological age group, or do you see sometimes some of the people who come to you actually also fall outside the perimeter that you have just mentioned?
Yes. Yes, the answer is yes. So it was
Mm,
very interesting because it was just lately I have a mentee, and she was actually not doesn't fall within the age. And she was basically in the millennial, if we talk about her age range, she actually she is a millennial. But what I see is this is what I meant by the tail end. And she
yeah.
has a lot of like the Gen Z characteristics. And the whole reason was because she basically took a gap year. She went to travel, she went to work, and so she started university late. So as a result, she became my mentee, but that doesn't differentiate that, oh, she's a millennial and she doesn't carry any of the Gen Z characteristics.
Speaking of which, would you be
Hmm.
able to share a bit more like, so what are considered classic Gen Z characteristics? Yeah.
This is a very interesting part. So I think, to me, based on my experience, a lot of Gen Z that I work with, they are very very value driven. If when they look for let's say for example, on many times when they look for a job, or even when the things that they want to pursue, at the end of the day, is the question that they ask is, what is the how does it connect to my purpose, and
Mm.
what is the value, how does these align with my values, as compared to other generation. We were born in a generation where we were told that, you basically just follow, right? Your values and purpose is not something that you put at the forefront of any conversation. But for this generation, I think the way that they think is really different. To them, it's the quality of their life, right? So why don't why would I want to do something that I don't enjoy for the rest of my life? For them, they would rather focus on and pursue something that they find meaning, they find value, and they find purpose. So some of the people that I spoke to as well, they start to realize that, especially in the workforce, they start to realize that, hey, Gen Z, this generation, they are really vocal. And I think this is what a lot of other generations, when they work with them, that is the gap that they find themselves in, and they couldn't navigate how to bridge this gap.
But if you look at it from the other side, right,
Mm,
there is also this. I mean, I think having values is important and good, and
mm,
knowing what you really want early in life is also good.
mhm,
I think that, like speaking on, at least for myself, I think one of
mm,
the challenge with the older generation like us
yeah.
is we realize that we should value our values a bit too late. And there is sometimes a sense of playing catch up because, like,
Mm,
in the early part of our years, we are
mm,
just, like what you say, we just hustle hard, we just work hard, we
yeah.
just do what we are told, and we just try to get things going.
Mhm,
But then once you reach a certain point in life, you will be like, okay, maybe that's not making me happy, that's not making me fulfilled,
mm,
and I'm looking for something else, right? But
mm,
for a lot of people in my bracket,
mhm,
by the time we come to that realization, we are in late 30s, mid 40s, early
mhm,
40s.
mhm.
So time is not exactly on our side. Then
Yeah.
we start feeling the panic, we start feeling the, the need to actually catch up more. And sometimes it can be a bit of exhaustion, it can be a
Mm,
bit of a challenge, right?
mm,
So I do understand that having a bigger sense of value early is good. But at the same
mm,
time, I feel that it also probably give rise to some negative connotations of Gen Zs or the younger
mm,
generation being, you know, too complainy,
mm.
too snowflakey.
Yeah.
How do you look at that and how do you address that?
Mm. It's a very great uh, question that you brought up, because lately I was just having this conversation with someone, and we start to see like why different generations grew up so differently. And a lot of people think that, or rather the comment that they have, the association they have for Gen Z is that they are too fragile. And I think a lot of times it's because of the context and the environment that we grew up with. So I think a lot of us will say that, oh, Gen Z grew up in a different generation. And it is true. The environment, the context, the generation, the world that they grew up in is, in a way, It's like they grew up with internet, they grew up with mobile phone. They can choose not to talk to people. They don't have to deal with that face to face. They're born out. They born with a world where hybrid already exists. So, in fact, one of the very common issues that a lot of Gen Zs are facing is the basic, which is the in-person social, social skills and all. And if we were to look at that from that perspective, this is what we think that it is something that should be like it should be almost like it should be a given. But yet, if this generation is lacking the access to be exposed to this environment, I think this is one of the main thing that is going to affect them in terms of how they face obstacle, how they overcome challenges. So in a way, resilience is only built when you face an issue and you do it
Yep.
over and over again. It is not like, oh, you go for like a 1 day course, 1 week course
Yeah.
to learn about resilience. So I think it needs like multiple touch points to really help them to build this resilience in them. So to circle back to your question, I really think that it's the context and the environment and the time that that this generation was born.
Well then, so going back to what you were doing for, the Gen Zs that come to you. So typically, what would be the challenges that they are facing that they realize that, they need to talk to you, or they need to have some sort of guided coaching or mentoring? If you could elaborate a bit further on that.
Yes. So a lot of them actually oftentimes when they come to us, the stage where they are in is they are at the crossroad.
Yep.
And they don't know what is next. So there are two types. One, it would be those who are at a crossroad and they don't know what is next and they're trying to navigate. And I would say that for them at that stage, a lot of times is knowing who you are and knowing what you want. So it's more of a self-exploration. And another thing, it's also because I think it's probably because of the societal pressure. A lot of us are told to follow a certain path. And once you have that expectation on yourself, it becomes very pressurizing. It can almost be a vicious cycle. And I see that in myself when I was going through that journey. So that is the reason why, the reason why I do what I do now is really to help them to navigate that, there is not just one path. There are plenty of paths. It's up to you to explore, and failure doesn't mean a bad thing, right? Navigate more things is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it helps you to build that experience. So that is typically a lot of them when they come to us, that is that stage where they are in. Another group of I would say our learners that come to us is that they have this desire to want to do more outside of the academic. And this generation needs self-expression. So they wanted something, they want to be able to learn something and apply and express themselves at the same time. So education is completely different from before, where we just download all the information and memorize and we just write. And the fact is nowadays we can ChatGPT a lot of things.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. I feel my brain activity much reduced these days.
Yeah.
Because every time when I need to do something, I'll just ask ChatGPT. Then I'll do the final review and decision making. So there are a couple of times where, for some reason, I don't have access to ChatGPT. I was trying to use my own brain to do it.
Yeah.
It hurts.
And I have to say that I think AI has been built in our daily life in a way that we cannot do without it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a good and bad kind of thing.
Yes.
So so coming back to that, I think it's really if all the knowledge you can access free, anywhere and everywhere, then what is the value in learning?
Yeah.
The value in learning is to apply in a way that represents you. So the self-expression, I think it's the important part where this generation is looking for. And it can come out in many forms.
So then how do you, I mean, now you talk about your target audience, then how do you actually reach out? How do you actually reach out to them to let them know that, oh, you are here to and available to actually help them if they have those problems?
Yes. So previously, or rather I would say currently, because we have not completed the rebranding process, is that we actually work. So our current business model is we work with organizations. So we are B2B. So we work with international schools, we work with private schools and NGOs and organizations. So that is how we reach out to these target audience. So we do have we through our exhibition and some of our conferences, we do have you coming to us to say that, hey, if I don't belong to any other organization, where can I access to all this? So then that actually kind of led us to exploring a B2C platform as well, which is something that we will be considering and exploring in sometime this year.
Right. But going back to your current mainstay, which is the B2B, that part I didn't know until you just shared it. So on the B2B side, usually what's the proposition that you use to reach out to those organizations? Or is it that those organizations already know that they have this problem? They're just waiting for someone with a solution to come to them. How does that what I'm interested in is how does that conversation takes place?
So for B2B, so it goes back to how when we originally started, it was purely an entrepreneurial mindset and skill set platform. And I'll be completely honest, when I first started, it was an uphill battle because I felt like, so that was pre-COVID. So
Yeah.
pre-COVID, I think our mindset, our mentality is very different. So a lot of times when we speak to schools, to them is academic is still more important. This is a good to have.
Right.
But to me, what I was trying to create awareness is that this is a life skills, because once you have it, it's not that it's going to come out in exams, but it is something that is transferable and can use it at any point in your life, depending on at what stage you are in. So I was actually going through this whole process of trying to convince, which it was a uphill battle. And so after COVID, things actually became easier because I think mentality changed, mindset had changed, and people start to realize,
and during COVID, probably a lot of people got very depressed.
Yeah, I think COVID is a wake-up call for a lot of us. And you start to realize the importance of skill sets and also your mindset. So, and that's why mental resilience is such an important piece that we value, because it is really, how you get through the difficulties and the challenges. So, so that is how we kind of we reach out to schools. So after COVID, so the school kind of see the value in, what we do. So then we started to run more sessions with them, and we start to curate more programs with them. And that is for the educational institution side of things. As for corporate, so corporate, how we basically, reach out to them, for mine is mainly to referrals. So what we did with corporate then is I think corporate start to realize, because Gen Z are stepping into the workforce. So they are starting to see the gap in the sense that they realize that, hey, the young graduate, as they enter into the workforce, there is a skills gap that is there. And it is something that they thought a school would teach, but it is something that a school doesn't teach. And the young talent group right now, they are not equipped in terms of the mental capacity to deal with the challenges and the obstacles that they have at a workplace. So that is the area where we come in, and we actually provide more on a consultative approach to corporate to say that, hey, these are the things that we can create a bespoke program. So usually when it comes to corporate, all our programs are bespoke.
Now, let me just dive a bit deeper into that, and probably because, again, I'm not from that generation, so I'm not really getting it yet.
Yes.
But I do see that, okay, so what organizations, they understood that yes, a lot of their workforce and increasingly more of their workforce will be from the Gen Z side.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned about, some of these Gen Zs, they are lost. They don't quite understand where their values are, how to place importance, and to be able to express themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly, but it seems to me that there could be a potential conflict where an organization, of course, is for profit, and then there are certain drivers and objectives that they need to hit. And could it come to a point where, after whatever program or training or consultative action, right? And the Gen Z is like, yeah, this culture is not for me. I'm building out. Is that part of, the kind of expectations that the organization will have? Or how do you assimilate whereby, because you talk about being a bespoke program, right?
Correct.
How does it assimilate to that it becomes a win-win and it doesn't create like mass exodus situation?
Yes. Yeah. This is
You had one?
this reminded me of a question that one of my client asked me. So what if we go through this program and everyone decide to leave, decide to quit? It's a legit question. I mean, it is a real question. And I think so. What our focus has always been, how can I help you to attract and retain? But of course, I can't say that with your company values and mission, if it really doesn't align with what the next generation want, there is no way to say that after they go through this program, they will retain. But on the other hand, what we are trying to do is to be the bridge to help them to understand what is the next generation, what is your current employees are looking at. So what we did is we will also do an analysis with the young talent group to understand what is it that they want, what is it they need, and we understand from the management side, what is the current gap, and then we create a bespoke program. So I would say that it is understanding from both ends and see how they can meet in the middle.
I take a more direct approach because in my brand consultation deep dive work, right, we do deal with such issues, not necessarily for Gen Z, right, but across the whole spectrum of the staff at the workforce, right? And we do get this kind of question where, the management is concerned about, opening up the floor, getting everybody involved in the brand discussion, right? And sometimes people might, not align with it or resist to it. And I usually always took a very straightforward approach. I will always tell the brand owners, like, either at the end of the entire exercise, those people need to leave, they should. Yeah. Because clearly they are not aligned, then what's the point of keeping them, right?
Yes.
But in your case, right, knowing what you are actually doing in terms of the facilitation and the bridging, do you also have organizations that come to you and say, I know what you're doing and we are preparing ourselves for the future. Are you able to take a look at our organization culture and help us adjust it such that it's more, for lack of a better term, Gen Z friendly? Does that happen in your space?
I have not, but I do have one that is a little bit similar. So they do have something that is targeting specifically at the next generation, but it parked under it parks under part of their DEI program. So when we come in, how can we? So in this case, we co-create with them.
Yeah.
So it's not a bespoke program that is right. So we co-create a program with them such that it still aligns to the overall mission values that the culture that the company has. It's more of like, so how can you tweak a little to match the existing pool of Gen Z employees, for example?
Right. Now, typically the kind of organizations you work with, are they local, regional, or they are MNCs or cross-border?
So currently the profile are majority MNCs. I do have certain SME. Yeah.
And since you brought up about DEI just now, which is kind of interesting, I just had a conversation, very interesting, very engaging conversation with some friends over DEI a couple of days ago. And again, if we look at the current landscape of what DEI, with respect to what's happening in the US politics, right? And that's why I asked you about, the organizations that you work with, mainly MNC. There is a wave of reduced activities, right, within the DEI landscape. Well, first of all, does it affect the work that you do? How does it impact the work that you do? And from your perspective, how do you look at that landscape as to where it is now and where it is heading?
I think, to me, I definitely see an impact on that, because part of the going back to the characteristic of these generations is that they want to share their voice and they want to be heard, right? So, and the thing is, these generation also emphasize a lot on diversity, DEI, inclusion, right? So I do see that it's gonna be a ripple effect, with the wave and the removal of these DEI components.
But so are the organizations that you are working with right now, are they like, okay, we just told the line, we'll start clamping down regardless, or they are finding ways to navigate like with the reduction? How are we going to still make sure that certain things make sense? Again, where do you see that go? Where's that going?
Okay, finger crossed. So far, I think that ripple effect has not reached that state yet, but I do foresee that it might be. I mean, first thing first would be the reduction of the budget.
Right. Right.
Reducing, initiative that is focusing on DEI. So, but again, with the reduction, I think then that brings the need, an even higher need, for voices to be heard, for different religion, different, races to be represented. So I think with the reduction of one thing, it brings the rise of another thing. So yeah, that's my take.
Right. And you were also talking about, I think right at the start of our conversation, you mentioned about you guys are going through a sort of a rebranding situation right now.
Yes.
Maybe you can share a bit more about what prompted you to do the rebrand and where are you at, in terms of your rebranding efforts at the moment?
Yeah. Glad that you asked that question. Honestly, it has been a very messy journey. So I think I was prompted to kind of like, okay, do this rebranding sometime last year. And the reason was because I think, like I shared earlier, when I first started, target audience it's toward more, like, I would say kids, teenager, 10 to 15. Yeah. So, and that's why I know that when I started this startup, I was serving the Gen Z generation. So that is the reason why, if you realize, the name is KID-Z. Yeah. So it stands for the Z generation. So, and along the way, because the target age group has, grown, and also because we are involved in more towards the transitioning work. So which means we are helping youth and young adults to transition into the future of work, to the next phase. So naturally, the brand, it's actually representing an older age group. So that is the reason why we see that there is a strong need to actually rename and rebrand, because currently a lot of people will still associate that with, we're dealing mostly with kids. But
I mean, it's in the name. It's kids starter.
Kids. Like, yes, correct. So which was the original intention, but just that they, it grew, and we started to see the need is in these pivoting years, 16 onwards, because there will be a lot they will face a lot of transitions and crossroads, and we see that, and it's something that I don't plan, but along the way we just started to realize that, hey, a lot of youth who are at that age are seeking for that solution.
Right. Okay. And where are you with that? So you talk about, you recognize the need to do the rebrand sometime last year, right? Yeah. And then you're now in the midst of it. Are you about to finish up, or where is it still right now?
Yes. So we're finger crossed, hoping that we can launch it by Q2.
Right.
So
Okay. Okay.
which is soon. So we're just
Very soon.
like, yeah, very soon. So
Like one more week to be exact. Okay, that's fast.
we at Q2 every year, 3 months time. So we're
Right.
just starting
Okay.
a little bit of the back end, so like the designs and stuff. So but that's where we are right now.
Okay. Got it.
Hmm.
Got it. And what's the hardest thing that you experience, or what is the hardest thing that you face as you are doing the rebrand? Like, it's easy to say, oh, we are rebranding, we are repositioning, but if you as you go through it, there's a lot of things that you don't expect. So
Yeah.
what are those challenges that you're facing?
Hmm. I thought you were gonna ask me what's the hardest thing in this journey.
No, it is,
Um.
but it is if you want to.
Yeah. I will stick to your question on this rebranding journey. I think it's a lot of internal work. It's a lot of reflecting. Who do I really want to be, and what do I really stand for? Because a lot of times, I would be honest. When I had the thought of going through this rebrand sometime last year, my thought was, oh, I'm gonna have this, right? And maybe it'll be even better. Like I can serve all the way from 10 years old all the way to like 28 years old, wider
Mm,
audience, more services that I can provide.
yeah.
But I think um I start to realize as I ask myself, a lot of like self-reflection questions, and I realized that maybe that's not what I wanted to do.
Mm,
And maybe less is more. So
yeah.
for me, I think the most difficult thing is to really figuring out which and what is that? What is that? It kind of brought me back to the journey of why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And that helped me to kind of funnel down. Like I used to have like a lot of ideas, but I just kind of streamline. Okay, it's only these few things. Like what is essential? Just do whatever that is essential. The rest, good to have, but not necessary.
Okay, that's interesting. And
Hmm.
I suppose the other segue into that is, now people look at you, and I assume probably rightly or wrongly, you are of course the founder. You are the
Mm.
face of the brand, and that ties very, very closely, of course, with your personal branding. In fact, it's
Mm.
probably from your personal experience, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
you started thing, you started this because
Yeah.
it's an evolution of what you've gone through personally, right?
Yeah.
So it ties very closely with your personal brand.
Mm.
Then my question is, how does your personal brand comes into play with the direction you're taking with the
Mm.
business? Do
Mm.
you consciously separate them, or do you sort of park it as part of your overall personal brand as you're moving forward? I'm just trying to understand
Mm.
what's your headspace in this.
Yeah. Oh, this is a tough question. But I think so. I asked myself this. I say it's a tough question because I kept asking myself this question.
Mm.
Even on like day one, I was like, so do I be a personal brand or do I am a corporate brand?
Yeah.
And to me, there is a strong why of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think who I am today is because of the accumulated incidents, things that happened to me that built my story. So
Mm.
I hope to, kind of like build that in my personal brand and translate to whatever brand that I'm doing in the future. Like currently it could be, the corporate brand that I'm doing, but that essence of who I am as a person, I think that element should translate into um every so-called corporate brand. It's kind of like, the essence of it. It should translate into the things that I do.
Okay.
Mm.
Um, you just now when we were talking about the business,
Mm.
you refer to it as we. So I assume that
Mm.
you have a team that is supporting in the back end, or you have a co-founder. What's
Mm.
kind of the structure of the business, if you don't mind?
Yeah. And I'll be completely honest. We're running on a very, very, very lean team.
Mm.
So, currently, in terms of operational wise, it would be me, and I do have another partner that is kind of like doing more on the strategic portion side of things. But other than that, yes, we do have a team that is running on basically projects, because currently the way that we are most of our the projects most of the B2B engagement is on a project basis. So that is how we are basically running the team at the moment. But
So,
with the rebranding and renaming, what we are going to change a little as well is we are still keeping the team really lean, but we are actually leveraging a lot with our partners. So I mentioned on a few key pillars that we are focusing on. And because the core of the work that we do is we want to really bring the real world experience, real world learning. So that is the part where we are actually partnering with our partners from different places to make that happen.
okay.
Mm.
And I assume, well, it could be biased because I'm obviously talking to you directly, but I would I assume that the sales and marketing fronts is largely you driving the narrative, right? And
Sadly or gladly.
but how are you navigating that?
Mm.
How are you navigating that you need to do marketing, you need to do branding, you need to do sales? How are you putting that all together?
Actually, it was
Or
more than that. It's everything. um, I think what I have learned along the way is, because I started as solo, right?
yes,
And and I think this still applies to a lot of founders, is that you just have to wear multiple hats. You just have to be hands on a little bit of everything. But I think when I did that, it caused me to have burnout, because I
mm,
realized that, I'm just not the good at this. I'm
mm,
spending I can
mm,
learn. I can spend weeks, months, I can take course to go and learn about these things, but it's just not sustainable. Like, I build slower. I think that is that lesson learned for me, is that and there was a point that I tried to do everything on my own. And I realized that I was very tired and my progress is like mega slow. It's just like very, very slow. So along the way, and then one of the things that is very real struggle for me, and I believe it might be for some of the founders as well, is that, you're trying to get sales. If there's no sales, yet you still have to hire people or pay other people.
yeah,
And that is a fixed cost.
yeah,
So that is one thing that I struggle a lot as well. But I realized that, hey, if I can get someone to do a very good job in something, it frees me time
yeah.
to do what I'm good at. So I think to navigate this sales and marketing journey is something that I'm still learning along the way. It's not easy to balance because it's a chicken and egg thing.
It is, and I think the it's probably like what you say, it's probably a mindset thing,
Mm,
because there are two schools of thought.
mm,
One is you have the founder who's
yeah,
like, yeah, I need to hustle, I need to just do, because I haven't got all this enough sales yet, so I have to do a lot of
yeah.
things myself. And like what you said, because you're doing everything yourself, the growth is slower. But
Mm,
there are founders who say, okay, I'm willing to take a slow burn and slowly build, do everything myself until I get certain places.
mm,
But there are also founders who are like, no, I want it fast. I really want it fast.
yeah.
And for it to be fast, I need to quote my friend Keith, we
Mm,
need to eat grass. Sorry, we need to eat glass. We need to eat glass every day and just jump off, and try to build a parachute on our way down.
yeah.
Where do you stand? I mean, it's always a spectrum, but
Mm.
where are you standing in that spectrum? Are you leaning more towards, you know, doing it
Eat,
slower,
eat
or
glass and choke.
yeah?
Um,
I realize most founders are masochist. Like,
mm,
we really want to torture ourselves on very obviously painful things, and we say to ourselves, oh, it's worth it. It's gonna
Now you're kind of walking me down the memory lane. I'm trying to think, but I think what I do is, so okay, this is sadly how I have been working before. It's
Mm.
so whenever there is sale,
Yeah.
it brings in like the money. So I haven't paid myself for like either in the longest time. So
Yeah.
basically every
Hey, high fives.
single high five, like, and sometimes I think about it, it's like it is like, people ask, why aren't you paying yourself? But the thing is,
Yep.
it's in trying to grow the business. So for me is at the point where I don't have money coming in, yes,
Yep.
I have to suck it up,
Right.
trying to figure things on my own or work out a partnership or a deal, right?
Yeah.
With people who knows how to give. But the moment when money starts to come in, that is where I don't pay myself at all. Like I
Yeah.
pay whoever that is,
Right.
be it the partners that we work with. Um, so that is how, or that is the part where I meant if I'm not an expert, I will get someone to do that. So it kind of, yes, the downside is I don't pay myself. I don't get paid. But that is how I start to see that that is only possible for things to move at a slightly faster rate. Because if not, I will constantly be in the loop of taking forever. Because
Right.
for me is I always have this thought is that when I started my entrepreneur journey, it I already failed. The first
Mm.
year when I start to venture into this entrepreneur space, I was in a collaboration and I already failed. So, and it was 2 years in. So I restarted on the third year, and along the way, things happen as well. So to me, it's I always feel like I already have a late start, right?
Right.
So I really wasted enough time. So I'm trying to speed up. I'm trying to catch up with the time that I've lost. So so I'm constantly thinking of how can I do that. And the thing that I learned is that I really cannot do it on my own. I really have to collaborate. I really have to leverage.
That makes sense. But and I also I can fully understand and appreciate what you mentioned. Like in my case, I probably took a longer period to realize I wasted a lot of time. Right. I mean, the probably the only difference is because for the longest time I still have a ongoing business, right? And I can tell you that's probably the worst part because you have a bit you have a business that's doing okay. You have a business that's bringing money in,
Yes.
so you don't see it as a failure. I mean, by all measures, it's not a failure, but it's a cap to your potential.
Yes.
Yeah, and I didn't see it until very late in my business game. Then I realized, oh, that comfort zone, that comfortable layer of
Yeah.
doing okay, having a business that brings in money, right, is actually the thing that's stopping me from growing.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that is then, oh, you have wasted like what, a good 5-10 years, and I can appreciate that urgency, like we are trying to make up for lost time, right? At the same time, we talk about, okay, we often don't, founders, we often don't pay ourselves first, right? There is also a school of thought, and I'm sure you come across when you talk to some of the coaches and more successful people, they were like, rule number one, always
You
pay
pay
yourself.
us.
You pay yourself first, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Like, I try to, but it's hard, right? I'm sure you try hard, right? But what's your take on that mentality then? What's your take on that mentality that you should pay yourself first, and then you are then in a less stressful situation, and then you're able to strategize better? How do you reconcile that with the reality of, we still need to get sales, we still need to have money to pay our partners and so on?
I think that school of thought it's real, it's true, and it's
Mm.
real. And the reason is because I think a lot of founders, and I believe all founders went through this journey of financially we are just strained, right? Because you are trying to, like, unless you're talking about you have a big sum of capital or you have invested in investing in your business, that is a completely different story. But I think for a lot of founders, they don't pay themselves because we want to keep the business going.
Yeah.
But sometimes when our basic needs are not even met,
Yeah.
it creates a lot of stress. Because I personally went through that journey, where I don't pay myself, and because I was not born in Singapore, so I'm basically renting in Singapore. So there is always this this at the minimum. You need to have this, in order to survive. So
Yeah.
and so it makes you in fear. Like if you don't get this amount of sales, then how are you gonna survive, right? So
Yeah.
that is that portion. And paying yourself is important because it takes care of your basic needs.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I get where that school of thought is coming from. So you need to, so it's just like, you have to love yourself before you can love others. You take care of yourself before you can take care of others.
Yeah.
But easy to say, but I realize that it's hard for me to do it as well. Is that I feel like I'm just like guilty because I can't be paying myself and not paying my partners. Very stumble.
Yeah. True,
Yeah.
true. But how do you try to circumvent that? Like that, okay, but okay, I think my question is, okay, given that we know that's the correct way, but we also have the reality of sales, right?
Yeah.
Does it, I'm always curious, like, does that actually motivate us to, okay, let's go and get more sales because I need to cover this? Or and sometimes this kind of motivation can have the reverse effect where they paralyzes you, right? You are just like stunned and you don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
So have you come across either way in terms of the experience?
You mean like don't
Like, does it paralyze you to think that, okay, how do I get what I deserve first, but at the same time, cater for the ops of the business? Does that paralyze you, or that actually drives you to, okay, I'm gonna just get more sales this period? Yeah.
I think in my case, I think it motivates me even more. It's like I'm like, crap, like gotta back off. Yeah. I think that is how I my default response are.
Okay, but then I think that would be in the right direction, isn't it? So you can actually push yourself, get a lot more, then you can pay yourself first, and then you still have.
Correct. But I think so during that process, of course, got to factor in there are times that imposter syndrome and all those things kicked in. So in a way, I would say that is my default response. But sometimes life happens, things happen, right? It gets in the way. So I do have, times, do have moments where like it paralyzes me to a certain extent. Not in a sense that I don't want to do anything, but it's just like in a way it kept pushing me to think like, what am I doing wrong? So I
Right.
would actually stop doing everything and go back and reflect on what was it that I have been doing and it's not working.
You're probably like, why is my competitor doing so well and so effortlessly?
Yeah, in fact, yes. So I'll be like, what the heck is going on?
No, but you brought up something very interesting. I don't think we talk about it until right now, where you just talk about this idea of imposter syndrome. And it's surprising to me, especially coming from you, I guess. At least from my outside understanding of you, right? I mean, you are a published author, and for a lot of people, that's a very noteworthy accolade, right? And it's seldom for people to think that, given that you are a published author and given that you have certain publicity or certain, things that have been mentioned about you, that you still feel the imposter syndrome that you just mentioned.
Yeah, all the
Which
time.
which is interesting. So can you just talk about a bit about that? Why do you feel that? Because again, if I come from an external lens, I'm like, you're probably the last person I would imagine to have imposter syndrome. So yeah, maybe you can dive in a bit more on that.
Yeah. The the one so to just go back to, you talk about when I published the book, right?
Yeah,
I actually published a book during lockdown. And
yeah,
it was the time where it was my lowest low, because that was the
yeah.
time that I transitioned to a caregiver completely, and my business had to basically put on hold.
Mm,
Um, it was the time that I was taking care of my dad who had a stroke,
yeah,
and the only downtime that I had was basically whenever he's asleep.
yeah,
So it was that during that pockets of time that I tried to build something. But I realized that to pivot my business at that point, because education was all booming online, it
yeah.
was really challenging. I just felt like I don't have capacity emotionally, mentally, physically. It was just none. So instead, what I did was I thought like, hey, I want to do a ebook that speaks about the next generation. So that was a little story behind, that ebook that you have just talked about. But I think throughout my whole life, I always have this imposter syndrome. So I came to Singapore when I was 12, and I
Mm.
was living alone by myself. So when I first came to
No,
Singapore at
that you
12,
sorry to cut you there, but
yeah,
that alone is a very, very big flex. Like you put 12-year-old me probably at some ulu part of Singapore, I will cry my balls out. I will cry my eyeballs out. Like, not even to talk about another country. I will just be a lost kid for sure. I'll just be lost. So yes, but please, continue. Like, that's a very big flex. You know.
yeah. No, thank you, thank you. But I think for me coming to Singapore at 12, I actually couldn't fit in. I always felt like
Mm,
I don't belong. I mean, I came here on a scholarship. So a
yep.
lot of people think that was something that was glamorous. But to me, I don't see it as it is, because I'm not even happy. I don't fit in. I couldn't cope. And I just struggle with my self identity, because for the longest time, I attached my identity with my grades. So I'm constantly in the loop where if I don't score well, I am a failure.
Mm,
That was the loop that I was in. And so growing up, I always felt like I'm not good enough. And I always felt like there is certain things that if I do well, it's because of the help of others. It's not because of me. And
mm,
even when, as I was journeying, because I was the only girl that is at home, right? So growing
mm,
up in a male dominated family. And it's interesting because my dad has this teaching is that you will work for people for a period of time, but you never work for people for the rest of your life.
mm,
And so growing up, I thought that, oh, maybe that was that teaching that I should learn as well, that I should never work for people for the rest of my life. But ironically, to my dad is, oh, you just have to find a stable job,
right,
right? Don't make life so difficult. So
right.
I think since young, I have this desire that I want to be different, but yet I felt like maybe I'm not equipped, maybe I'm not capable of doing that because I am a girl. So that is the first thing. And with, growing up as a teenager, as a youth, I just didn't know how to fit in because I was just quiet, typical, a very Asian family when I'm a female, and I just don't know how to speak up for myself. Even at times where the funny thing was when I don't want to go to school, I don't even know how to speak up. I just cry. I just get
Mm,
crying and crying and
right,
crying.
right.
And that is how I make my voice heard. But a lot of times people don't understand me. So even when I started on this entrepreneur journey, honestly, so before that, I was actually in corporate for a couple of years. So when I started on this entrepreneur journey, a lot of people around me say that you're crazy. Like, why are you on this journey where you have a good, stable job and, and stuff like that? And to me was because if I want to start something, why do I wait? I
Yeah,
wanted to give it a shot. I want to try it now because my risk is always higher if I wait it out. So the harsh truth is when I first started, a lot of people just tell me that you won't make it, tell me that I will make it. And sometimes without me, like I know this, but a lot of times people are looking on the sideline. It's like, okay, I'll let you try, but I know that one day you're going to go back to the corporate. So that kind of, I faces quite a few of these circumstances that made me naturally develop this imposter syndrome in me that I probably don't have what it takes because I'm not from the education background. I'm not my university is I don't specialize in early childhood. I don't specialize in education. And that was the first thing that people already eliminate me. Like, who do you think you are to make change in this education scene? So I always felt like I'm not qualified. And I felt like I don't have what it takes. Why people would trust me. So all these are the honest, real, raw feelings that I get. Um, and the only reason that kept pushing me to do what I do is because to me was I never thought of like how I want to, grow it to which scale, but it's really how can I make a difference, even if it's just one difference, little by little and day by day. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. That's actually very insightful. But I would want to add this. I understand why you probably have imposter syndrome because of the circumstances you just described. Although I would say, you don't have imposter syndrome. You just have lousy friends. Get rid of those lousy friends. Hang out with us more. Be happy.
I wish that
Be
I knew you.
happy.
I wish that I wish that we all met earlier.
Right. But I do but on the more serious, I do understand what you mean by the imposter syndrome because I have a shitload of it. Pardon the language, I have a shitload of it. But for me, it's a bit different from you, right? And probably because either I'm a guy or because I'm more thick-skinned, I usually don't bother with negativity. Like when I do something,
that is a very good trait, actually.
like I think even from very early on, like I can just ignore people's bad comments. Like it's I just shut off those. Yeah.
How do you do that?
I suppose I am. I mean, for lack of a better term, or maybe it's just I'm probably insensitive to those things. You're right. I think very early on, I kind of realized that if you run fast enough, the noise can't catch up. That's how I feel. So when I do something and I stumble or I sense or I feel that there are naysayers, I just run faster. That's how I push myself. I just run faster so that the noise can't catch up. And after a while, it's just background. It's just background noise. That's how I look at it.
Can I share something?
Sure.
So when we first met, actually, I remember you very clearly. And the reason because you gave me an impression was you are very sure of what you want and just no nonsense, no whatever bullshit it is, just go straight to the point. And it actually inspired me that in that way because I think I see the opposite side of you. And that is what I thought was like, hey, that is how we should be. Because a lot of times I have to admit, sometimes we listen and we internalize a lot of the negativity. And then in our mind, we will process. And I think especially for females, we process even more.
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember when I read it, I was like, okay, very straightforward, very straight to the point, very clear. So I was like, okay, so that was my impression.
Well, unfortunately, some would say that you're too blunt. You're right. There was so many times like, this guy is just no filter.
No, I remember when we were doing the group exercise, we were like, because you just like basically what people say, you just like ignore. You just kind of go on, which I think.
Sorry, go on first. Yeah,
no. Which I think through the workshop we all learned
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I suppose the disadvantage of having that kind of character, right, is like what I say, people would sometimes think that you're very brass, very blunt, and it could also be insensitive. Like you don't consider other people's feelings.
Mm, mm.
And that is an unfortunate byproduct of that, because like I said, my whole idea is I want to run faster so that I don't, so that the noise doesn't catch up, right?
Yeah.
But in the process of if you're running faster, you a lot of times don't pause and smell the roses, and to be perfectly honest, that's also something I'm trying to work on. Like, yes, I want to run fast, I want to push, but I also want to make sure that I do take more notice of the surrounding, and not just barge like mindless, insensitive kind of person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's how I deal with noise. I just shut them out and I just keep running. And if you run fast, I suppose if you run fast enough, then the noise doesn't catch up. Yeah. But going back to, for me, my imposter syndrome comes from the fact that because I'm in the tech space, and technology moves very fast. So every time when we felt that, we had a breakthrough in our features, in our software, and then we were feeling good about it, then the next day you
The
wake
next
up
thing
and then
comes up.
there's new things, and then
Yeah.
people are doing more things. I'm like, this never ends.
Yeah.
So for us, a lot of times when we are pushing our thing forward, we're also like, is it really up to mark with whatever the market is already doing? Are we like lagging behind and things like that? So those are the kind of things that plays with my head sometimes when and that's like, oh, are we really that good? Yeah.
And that actually brought me to, it kind of intrigued me. Then, like, it's more of like my question for you, right? Is that you mentioned that in the tech space, things move so quickly. And, when there is new things that you want to, catch up the market, you have to develop things to match up to that standard. And and because of the speed on how quick technological change is, so how do you navigate that? How do you keep your whole team,
Right.
just keep going on to the, I will call it the iteration mode?
Yeah. Unfortunately, in the tech space, it's always iteration. There's no stop. It's always in the background, right? Right now, as I'm talking to you, my tech team is doing new forms of R&D, new forms of testing, and so on. So it never stops. But I think on a personal level, probably not only just on the tech side, like even in some of my personal things, like, I also do training and coaching on the side, and of course I also have my digital marketing business, and plus with this new podcast initiative I'm doing, right? I would say this is my approach. I'm not saying that it is necessarily the best way, but my approach is, right, one way I try to get over whenever I feel that imposter syndrome creeps in, or my escape from feeling imposter syndrome, right, is I really double down on learning something very, very deep and very, very fast. Because I don't want to be caught in a situation where I don't know enough to carry a conversation with someone in the industry. That's again, full transparency, that's always my biggest fear of anything. Like if I'm just I'm talking to you and I'm asking you about your business in terms of the Gen Z, right? I don't know anything about Gen Z. So I'm coming in like an idiot. I'm asking you, I don't have pressure. But if you are in the tech space, and if I know that you're established in the tech space, I will have that
Pressure.
that pressure, that imposter syndrome will start to come up, because I'm concerned that I'm not as good as you in terms of the intellectual level. So I try to double down on my learning in terms of speed and in terms of depth very aggressively. Like, for example, this whole podcast initiative, right?
Yeah.
I'm totally new to it, you know? Then I have to really go and look at how people are doing it, how people are, arranging it and all sorts of things,
Yeah.
I need to get to a point where if I tell people I'm doing a podcast, I have something intelligent to say to communicate, when I talk to other podcasters.
Yeah.
So that the people don't think like, hey, this guy sounds like an idiot. So that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, when I started doing training, for public brand classes,
Mm.
I know my subject matter, but I have no idea who the students are, who the learners are, and I have no idea how to conduct a class, right?
Yeah.
I had to really go and understood how that whole thing works. And I've dig deep into it. So that's how I push myself to really learn things very, very fast and get to a depth where, okay, I'm comfortable enough to have a conversation.
Wow. So I'm saying that you really play a very huge role in the learning and development in the tech space that you are in.
I suppose it's more for my personal. Yeah, it's more for my personal. And of course, once I hit a certain level of understanding, I try to make that knowledge transfer to my team to make sure that they are also on par, right? So I give you an example. Like right now, I'm in the AI space, right? We are doing our AI chatbot, right?
Yes.
When we first started, I honestly felt like we are the dumbest people in the market. Because like, this is such a simple thing. Like we are seeing all our competitors, we are seeing all the technologies, like everybody's doing all the magical, wonderful AI things. And we're like, this is a simple chatbot. Like, how are we going to compete? And there was a period of time where we were feeling like we are probably the slowest guy in the market, right? So we actually really dive very deep into the architecture and the framework, the logic of how a chatbot works, not just only on the AI side, but also on the fundamental technology. So that especially like when we first started talking about the product in networking, in section, we really got challenged. Like the first few interactions we have in some of those networking, right? People will straight up ask you, so what's so different about your chatbot compared to like, and for your information, like there are like 2,000 to 3,000 chatbots around the world. Like ours is just one of them. So people would point blank ask me, so what's different about yours compared to others? And I can tell you for a good period of time, I can't answer it. And I go into networking dreading people asking me that question. Because there was this period of time where I simply cannot answer. The moment someone asks me that question, I would freeze there and then try to wriggle some weak response. And for those people who are in the space who knows, they can smell that I don't know. And that was a very, very bad, experience. So we had to really, really dive very deep, very fast, try to fully understand where we need to be more knowledgeable. And thankfully, we found a way to, craft it the way we want, and yet is very differentiated from the market. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wearing this pink shirt right now with you. Like this whole thing could have, okay, forget about it. Yeah.
And how long does it take you to find that answer?
I would say it's about, on and off, it's about 2 months. 2 months. Two months for me to actually fully dive into what's the technology difference or what's the experiential difference, and finally found that differentiating factor. Not only a differentiating factor, but a differentiating factor that only we are able to express it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
So then that become our North Star. And from then on, yes, then that everything else is a lot easy to explain because we are able to explain it in a way that only we can explain. And funnily enough, it has nothing to do with technology.
Oh.
Yeah. It was actually from the 2 decades of agency experience, which is kind of a funny thing, right? I spoke of just now, like, I always thought that 20 years of agency experience is kind of a stumbling block for us to realize our potential.
Yeah.
But turns out that this differentiating factor in our chatbot solution was only possible because we had that 20 years of experience.
Oh.
Yeah. So I always like to joke that the most interesting part about our AI solution is not the AI, it's actually the human experience.
That is what makes it really, that is your USP, because it's something that you can't replicate.
Yes. So thankfully we found that. But before that, we were really struggling to, and really at that point, I was feeling a huge amount of imposter syndrome. It's like, I just keep thinking every day, we are not good enough. We are not good enough. Every time we go out to the market, every time we tell people we are being bashed, and being bashed is still fine. The biggest upset is you don't even have a good counter to tell people, so.
Wow. I think one day I need to listen to your full story.
You can start your own podcast, and then you can bring me on and
invite
let
you.
me.
Okay. Watch out for my podcast.
But is that like, okay, on that note, right? Like a lot of personal brand content creators are coming out with their podcasts, right?
Yes.
So now we have this joke, like, you throw a stone on the road, like, you'll probably hit a podcaster. But on a more serious note, is that something that you're considering as part of your brand or your business outreach?
The answer is yes. So I actually have done similar like podcast kind of thing. I think it was around 2 years back. So there was a period of time where I was actually living in US. And that was where I actually find I have pockets of time, and it allows me to do a little bit more of creative stuff. So I actually started talking to, at that point, my focus was on Gen Z entrepreneurs because I'm in that space. So I actually spoke to a couple of them, which was very interesting. But I ran into the issue where, because we have a change in the person who basically handle our social media, and we have this backlog of issue where we have all the assets, but just I cannot there's nobody to edit it and push it out.
Yeah.
So that was the issue. And then I came back to Singapore. It's more on the go things. So all the creative side of things kind of like chucked aside.
Yep.
So but now is this year actually one of the things that I plan to do is to actually start a podcast. Don't know how to do it yet, but that's why I'm going to figure it out.
It probably sounds cliche, but my advice to you is just do it, because that's exactly what we did. I was supposed to do a podcast. I was supposed to start a podcast with another co-host a while late last year, right? And we actually recorded the first episode. But for whatever reason, he got busy, I got busy, and then we didn't really get it started. That it was just sitting there collecting dust for a while. And then I look back, like, the last few times when I tried to start something similar with another co-host, it always didn't get off the ground because the other party always have more commitments. Then they couldn't spare the time. And because this is a voluntary effort, I can't also push them.
Yeah.
Then I realized that, okay, screw it, I'll do it myself. And then that's how, we just, bang a few things together, get a concept, and then just start recording. Yeah. So that's how we started. And, lo and behold, we are multiple episodes in. So I think there is value in just starting and not worrying about making it perfect. We can improve as we go. But you talk about, a lot of times, and I also see this as a big issue with a lot of content creators. The stumbling block is the editing, right? The video, the editing portion. So shout out to my video producers, my video editing team, because I don't do all the editing. Right?
Okay.
I just come, turn on the camera, and I just talk to people. That's all I do. After the recording is done, I'm out. I had no idea how they do the cuts and the, And that obviously makes my job a lot easier.
Yes.
I don't really have to deal with the post-production.
Yes.
So I suppose if you want to get a podcast series going and make sure it's sustainable, do make sure you have a video editing resource to work on it. Otherwise, you really will get stuck.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest blocker back then. So I'm not sure I repeat the same mistake.
All right, I suppose this look, time flies, and thank you for being here with us for more than an hour. I appreciate it. I think definitely we are gonna look forward to more episodes. Either I'll bring you back again for season 2, or you can bring me to your podcast and then we can
But thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Okay.
Thank
bye.
you.
Hey guys, if you enjoy this podcast, subscribe and share it with your friends. We drop new episodes every week, so stay tuned. See you in the next one.